Hello, everybody. Hi, welcome back. Thank you for joining me today. Today's video, we're going to be talking about transition words. And I just wanted to also thank everyone for all the follows and all the nice comments about the channel. And I also have some new things planned. So I'm going to be adding, hopefully within the next month or so, some new categories to the channel. And I'm pretty excited about that. But anyways, today's class, we're going to cover another category of transition words that is under the category of example. All right, so stay tuned.
Live your life within the moment. And don't go wait until the morning. You never know when it is over. All that I know is we'll get older. So let us dance this night away.
Before we get started, I just wanted to talk about transition words a little bit, just in case it's your first video that you're joining me on the channel. Transition words are really important part of connecting sentences together, or statements or clauses, which means you can say one thing and you can use a linking word or transition word to connect those two sentences together. And what does that do? Makes you sound a little more fluent, a little more native like. So a lot of times my students want to achieve this, and I usually direct them towards learning some transition words. So in this video today, you're going to learn a couple more that you can add to your list. So I know what you're thinking. Jay, you always teach us these words, but how do we actually get these words into our vocabulary? It's a good question. You need to practice. And without practicing and saying these words, you'll find it difficult to remember them and you will lose the words very easily in your mind. So it can be a couple of days or a couple of weeks. If you don't actually use the word, it's kind of hard for your brain to find it later. So here's what I suggest. After today's class, when I teach you some of these transition words, just walk around the house and try to make some sentences. Try to practice using these transition words. You can do it out loud if you want, if nobody's around, or you can just do it in your mind and you can just think of how you can create sentences with these transition words. All right? This will help you immensely. It will greatly improve your ability to recall these words and start to adapt them into your vocabulary. It's a very important process. Okay? All right, let's get started. So our first word today that we're going to work on is for example. And I know that this is the name of the category, but this is pretty common. So an example of this would be, imagine that you were at the gym and you had a fitness instructor and they were showing you around and maybe you were asking some questions. Usually somebody that is giving instruction to somebody uses for example as a linking word. It's very common. So I'm at the gym and my instructor is telling me about some sort of muscle group that I have to work on, and they will use for example and they'll give me maybe a list of different exercises that I can do. So I might say, hey, I'd really like to work on my legs, and they would say, well, you can do leg exercises, for example squats, or you can do the leg press, or you can ride the bike. And they're going to then continue to give me a list without making a weird abrupt stop in the sentence. They're just going to use for example and link everything together. Okay? Now our next transition word is for instance. And this one obviously is very similar to for example, but it is a little more formal. So for example is very casual. We use it in everyday English. For instance is something that you might want to use in a more formal situation. Maybe you're at work and you're talking to a coworker or to your boss. So imagine you are talking to your coworker and you're talking about a project or something like that, and you need to give them some ideas. And they might say, I really don't know how to research that. I'm not sure exactly what to do. And you might want to say, well, you can go on the website. For example, you could say, but that sounds really casual. So you usually want to say, for instance. So, oh yeah, you might want to go onto this website. For instance, maybe this one or this one or this one. So for example, for instance, very, very similar, but for instance, we use more in a business setting, a little bit more formal. You can use it casually, but most people choose to say, for example, okay? So our next linking word, transition word, is such as. And this one is probably the most common. It's casual. Native speakers use it every day, all day, especially for giving any kinds of examples or giving somebody a list of something. Somebody's going to a grocery store, you might say, hey, you want to pick up some stuff or some produce, such as, and they just give a list. But let me give you a different example. So imagine I go fishing on the weekend and a friend of mine says, hey, how did you do fishing? I might say, oh yeah, it was a great day. I caught a lot of fish. I caught a lot of fish, such as, and I might say trout, catfish, bass, something like that. I just start sort of listing off those things. So you can imagine if I have to do that separately. So yeah, I went fishing and I caught a lot of fish. So how do I start the next sentence? Like, and then trout. So you can use like, but it's a little bit stranger. It's better to just keep that sentence flowing, right? And so that's a good example where you can see the usage of transition words and how they keep everything flowing from one sentence to the next. Okay. So our last linking word for today is like. And this one is very difficult, and I sometimes don't suggest to try and use this one right away because it can be very confusing. Why? Because like is also a verb. So imagine I say a sentence, I like things like. So now I have like twice, and it sounds a little strange. So in this type of sentence, I would, as a native speaker, I would just naturally say, I like things such as. I like things, as an example. Something like this instead of like and like, because it can be very, very confusing. So you can use like as a transition word, but I would leave this one until you get a little bit more experience. And if you do say like in a sentence as a verb, you are better off to use such as, so that you're not repeating yourself. I do hear native speakers say like. So I like things like, and they do that, but it can be a little bit confusing when you're listening, a little hard to listen to, and it can create a little bit of confusion, especially for other non-native English speakers. So this one is in the list. It's very common, but I would leave this one out for now until you get a little bit more experience and you have a little bit more advanced vocabulary with your English. Then you could sort of look at like as a transition word to kind of help you. I wanted to add it, and I wanted to mention it in this video because you will hear native speakers using it, and just be aware that they are using it as an example, or such as, or for instance. It's the same idea. Okay? All right, so that's it for today's video. Covered 4 transition words, 3 good ones, a couple casual, 1 formal, and the last one, just be careful with that one. All right, I appreciate you guys watching these videos. Thank you very much. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye for now.